going to, in just a minute, we're going to break out for small group discussions. But first, I wanted to just give folks a quick orientation to what we're about to do and what to be thinking about. So let's cover these steps, and then we'll go ahead and move into that exercise. So just keep in mind, as you're participating in the small group discussions, really think about not dominating conversation and creating the space for everybody at your table to participate. And then we're going to transition to a slide in just a second that is going to have a number of different discussion points to help ground the conversation this morning. So it's really a starting place for the discussion, but anyone is free to provide input on topics that might not be covered through these points in relation to today's forum as well. So please feel free to bring in other points that you think are important. So we're going to leave these discussion points up on the screen. Each of the tables has a facilitator and a scribe wearing these jaunty green ribbons. So they're going to introduce you to the small group discussion. We invite you before we do the breakouts, if anybody needs a quick break to stretch or refresh your coffee or anything like that, now's a good time to quickly get up and do that. And then once everybody's back at your tables, you'll start the discussion. We'll come back together as a group at 12:25. So thank you all so much for coming back together in the room. I'd like to invite our facilitators, if there are any tables that would like to share one or two thoughts. We have a few minutes to report out to the group at large. So maybe it's your facilitator, maybe you have a different representative that you've identified at your group. But if folks are able to come forward, as we just have the one mic, to share some thoughts that you heard at the table, maybe it's something that was repeated a couple of times. But I'd invite some of the facilitators to come up so that they can report out what those thoughts were. Don't be shy. Come on up. All right. Okay, great.
Either or. Oh, thank you. Hello. I'm Joe Bruno. I'm one of the resource centers over here representing Delta Peers. I wanted to bring up one major thing that we talked about was when a mother is pregnant and she goes and she's getting paperwork and everything else that just that when you have a fever, go to the emergency room for all of these things that they tell you to do when you're at the doctor's when you're pregnant. In that packet of stuff, we talked about having behavioral health things. What is it like to be a parent and have depression after your child is born, or what are the resources in that level? So that was one of the discussions that we had on. It's not necessarily a physical thing, it's an emotional. So having that paperwork handed to them in the same process. That was one of the things that we talked about. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was teen moms. We had a discussion about teen moms too, about how they in themselves and their culture and their family, they're probably coming from a parent who was also young. So we have even younger grandmothers that are in this living situation that they need special resources. So that was another conversation that we had, was about teen moms. And the big thing on health services and how to establish new programs in a system that is flawed, to say the least. So that discussion on health insurance, or is it, contracting with somebody else? What does that really look like, and how to partnership? So those were our discussions today. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, would you like to go next?
Sure. Try my best. Regarding reducing stigma, we talked about how you can use the portals of entry being where children and families are already receiving contact with some consistent relationship, which happens to mostly be preschool or schools, because often the doctor's offices, you're seeing different people. If you are using county-based services, you don't have that consistent doctor. So like, where are you gonna share? Where are you gonna slow down and be able to do that? And so the value of perhaps doing more in the school settings for workshops and using the important relationship of the preschool teacher. Let's see. And the importance of reducing the blame factor, because, you know, stigma comes with blaming the parent, and how, I guess, how you are in relationship when you speak to parents, and how you help staff speak to parents so that they will talk to you and not feel like they're bad because their kids are having a problem and have to wait for a long time to seek help because they are shy to do so. For the seeking support and training, many people talked about the need to have more family partners who are coming from lived experience, and having parents understand what's developmentally normal, because so many parents have kind of no idea. And even if you go to the doctor, you might be seeing about whatever's happening today, but you don't know what 6 months from now is supposed to look like. And there's such a fast pace of development in early childhood. Having that be kind of more pronounced process, and having things like magnets for the fridge, or there's more interconnectedness between providers so that there's more understanding of what is typically developing and when you should seek help. And involving dads more, and having not all the pressure be on moms to pay attention to every detail, but the strengths of dads and their involvement in the process. We talked about how hard it is for people to know where to go for help. These days, things are very media-based, and so like you don't really know, like if I could put a question in, where do I get help for my 3-year-old in Contra Costa, and then actually have a portal that has a listing of all the services and their eligibility requirements so that it's easier to access. And the last question was trainings. I think one of the important things that was brought up about trainings was the need for cultural training, because there's often a lack of understanding about different cultures' needs and how they perceive childcare and growth and development. And so that affects what people will share and whether they will persist in getting more assistance. And one of the last things is how important it is to have aftercare or networks of support for families, whether that's support groups or providers being able to transition kids to another service if it's needed. Does it even exist? Is there some kind of checking in after? What makes it hard to let go of clients?
Thank you, and I'll take that. All right, and we've got time for 1 or 2 major takeaways from the rest of our folks.
Okay. So I came from table 15, and 2 things that we discussed was the importance of the MHSA separating 0 to 5 from the rest of youth. So currently, money is allocated from birth to age 25, and how we have the buzzword of early childhood mental health and early childhood education, and if the MHSA could separate that birth to 5 from the rest of 6 to 25. How we could maybe focus more on what we're all here for today. And the second piece that we talked a lot about at table 15 was the importance in investing in early childhood education, because for many of our families in Contra Costa County, their first entry into the system or the education system, or how do I seek services for my child, is at daycare or preschool. And if we're able to if we can educate our preschool teachers and our preschool directors on how to give our families access to these services, they're the first ones. And so Can we give it to them so they can give it to the families?
Hi, I was at table 9, and we had a couple great ideas around the stigma surrounding the word mental. So we thought of the idea of maybe calling it brain health, or brain health and development. Also, we thought of another idea about using an app for new moms, inviting them to parenting groups and information and resources, because sometimes it's overwhelming when a new mom just has a child, getting all those resources and where she puts those resources, but like that reminder app saying, hey, do you need this, or do you need a parenting group, or do you need childcare? So anyways, those are our ideas.
I was at group 14, and we came up with more support while waiting on wait lists, so that would be more support for the parent caregiver, to expand services in our county, to start the education process with parents and caregivers before the child is born of what to look for, and also improving our training around implicit bias and racism and assumptions and judgments towards parents and caregivers of children with big behavior, that parents 9 times out of 10 already walk in with a lot of shame and guilt when you first see them in the first place. Thank you.
Okay, I was at table 5, and we went through a whole lot. And it went over every question, but the first question, it started off, it asked about the child, and it gave an age, and then it gave a situation. So my question was, well, what was the race of the child? And nobody had that. So how can I work with a child, and I don't know the background, the history, and it doesn't give me anything? So that's the one thing that we talked about, is making sure that you know the history and the background of the child and the family, instead of walking into the home or to the family and making your assumptions of this is why the child is the way that he is. We talked about training the teachers in all the resources and services, and as everyone talked about, the main things that they talked about is the background history and biases and racism in the workplace before they go out into the schools and work with families, because it's more racism in the workplace, and if you don't take care of it then, how can you take care of a family? Reduce the barriers of the services, appointments. Every appointment and every provider in here works generally 9 to 5. Most of the families do too. The services that you offer to the families are between 9 and 5. These families cannot get to those places. They may not have gas, they might not have bus tickets, they may not have services, a way to get from East County to West County to Central. So we got to figure out a way to make services and appointments where these families can get to them without being dinged. Expand Medi-Cal instead of being in one county. Mental health is not one county, it's all the counties. And the services that the family may need may not be in the county that is needed. We were talking about, as everyone's driving home and everybody's done with everything that they're doing, and you're going home and you look across and you see all the billboards. They are filled with tobacco, marijuana, alcohol, and everything else. Most of the families know about marijuana than they know about the services. So why don't we figure a way to put those services on those billboards and those marquees than all those things that are taken away from our children? And we talked about a lot. And training for families and the providers before the kids go into the schools, so they can get to know them and understand instead of a 5-minute introduction. So they will all get an understanding of each other and see what that person is and if that provider is right for the family instead of being right for the provider. So.
Okay, we've got time for 1 or 2 more to share.
So I was at table 10, and one main point was immigration, that we need better articulation agreements between early childhood services and immigration process, and being able to help individuals fill out forms, helping them to understand mental health services in their languages, and also being able to help them process the difficulty of mental health and the stigma that they might feel, those cultural processes around sensitivities, what does it mean in their culture, because for a lot of us, to even access mental health services, it makes us worry that maybe there's something wrong with us. And that isn't the case. So we want to really be able to look at those articulation agreements between other immigration services and how we might be able to partner better in introducing early childhood education support and social emotional support and mental health. And the other was accessing training, that there's limited time frames in which we can even train staff at a lot of centers because they only have a 1 hour to 45-minute staff meeting. So it's really important to look at other opportunities to be creative, such as webinars or virtual trainings to support them in understanding trauma and early childhood social emotional needs, and also overall development.
Hello, my name is Marcela, and I was in table number 1, which is this Spanish-speaking table. So a few points that came up was, first, what can help the stigma around, the Hispanic, Latino community, and sometimes is providers not knowing, much about the cultural or jumping into conclusions, which is linked to also, what can help providers, what training they might need, and that training might be just to be curious about each individual, and also, getting in the community and learn a little bit more what is the, that community needs, and not necessarily just jumping into conclusions or judgment, or also just suggesting that that's what the community needs. Also, one of the things that come up is, the language barrier. Sometimes, when they know where the resources for mental health are, sometimes there's not someone that speaks Spanish, for example. And sometimes it came up that sometimes different parents, don't know where these services are for mental health, where to go to access them, which brought up some ideas about that they would like to see more advertisement, more, noticing, more brochures everywhere, not necessarily like in one spot, but just in the community. I know the previous person that spoke, I totally agree too, and that's what it came out that sometimes.
Thank you. Thank you so much to each of you for sharing some key takeaways from the group and highlighting some of the needs that we're seeing in the community. I wanted to take one moment just to acknowledge all of the incredible service providers that we have literally around the room today that have tables with lots of information set up. So some of you might be sitting in the circle tables, so feel free to raise your hand or wave as I go around the room if you're not sitting by the table. We've got the County Community Services Bureau. We've got Seneca Mobile Response Team and Delta Peers. We've got We Care Services for Children, Early Childhood Mental Health Program, Cope Family Support Center, Lynn Center, Cocoa Kids, First Five Contra Costa, Stand for Families Free of Violence has some information in the back, NAMI of Contra Costa, and the Contra Costa Crisis Center. So thank you all so much for being here today. So with that, we're going to learn a little bit more about how to stay involved.
Hi, everyone. So if you like what's going on here today, Early Childhood Mental Health Community Forum, we've had various other forums this year. To give you an example, previous forums were suicide prevention, immigration, and supportive housing. So we have tried to focus our forums on specific topics that we're hearing from the community, and then gather some speakers that have some experience as well as education and history with working with those communities or people that are affected by the various topics we've discussed. And then we gather input as well. So this is kind of what we did right here. The small group discussions is also part of what we do, and it helps us in preparing for our next 3-year plan cycle that's 2020 through 2023. So ways you can stay involved. If you like what's going on here, one is you registered in at the table, and if you provided an email, you'll probably be put on a mailing list and receive any updates that we have of future meetings, such as CPAW, which is the Consolidated Planning Advisory Work Group. So we meet monthly to discuss various activities, programs, challenges sometimes that's going on within our behavioral health system. And so that's through Contra Costa County. We have various subcommittees through that program, such as System of Care, which is implementation of some of our new services that are cutting across children and adult services, as well as our Suicide Prevention Committee, Children, Teens, and Young Adult Committee, our aging and older adult, and then we have Social Inclusion, which works to reduce the stigma of mental health, as well as various others, Alcohol and Other Drugs, Housing Committee. So I really do encourage everybody that's interested to take some time to learn about this. The meeting information's on there, and then some of them will have a phone number you can call to get specific details on where the meeting happens. Some of them move around throughout the community. We also encourage input through our MHSA CC Health email. So we usually also live stream these type of events so people can remote access them. If you're wanting to participate and you can't physically be there, you can watch the event and provide input via the email and give some honest feedback. One of it is just planning for future forums such as these. And then the other one is input if you feel that there was something that wasn't covered or missing that you would like to see, please provide that input. And then next are the voting instructions. So I mentioned earlier about voting and the green dots that are in your folder. So we have identified, I want to say it's about 14 topics that are outside along this hallway here once you go out, and they're along the walls. And the various topics that are covered have been collected from previous 3-year cycle, and we like to monitor kind of where the community is focusing their, I guess, what's important to the community more so. So these are identified from, like I said, our previous 3-year cycle, but they're all up on this screen, and all of them are going to be out there. But we encourage everybody to use your green dots, and you can place them on this sheet out there in any way you'd like. Whatever you feel is most important to you. You can place all 5 on one sheet. You can use your 5 to spread them around, but we really encourage you to use your 5 dots and vote outside, because that is also part of how we will plan for our next 3-year cycle, 2020 through 2023. And I want to say, actually, one more thing. I forgot to do it earlier. I just wanted to thank all of the facilitators and scribes for volunteering at your table and assisting us in this process. This is the challenging part sometimes, having enough people to be able to do all of this small work. It's not as easy. So please thank you for coming and for just volunteering your time to be here today and help us in collecting information. Before you leave, make sure you don't take any of the notebooks that have all the information. Place everything back in that folder so that we make sure that we get all that information back and we are able to collect and summarize later. Thank you.
Great. All right. So right now there are bright green public comment cards that are being distributed around to tables. I can see them slowly flowing across the room as we speak. Very exciting. But now is an opportunity for, if anybody has thoughts, you're certainly welcome to fill out one of those public comment cards and share your feedback in that way. But we also wanted to create the space if anybody wanted to very briefly in 1 to 2 minutes share public comment at this time. Oh, well, we've got it recorded too.
One of the things that we talked about at our table and a few people outside is, I know this is a hard subject to bring up and people want to talk about it, and it's a kind of clutch the curls conversation is, we're all sitting in here, and one thing that I didn't hear anyone really talk about is Black mental health. And a lot of the kids that are getting put out the classrooms are the Black children. We don't even have enough Black facilitators or teachers in here to work with them. So how do we propose to work with our Black children where we're the ones that's having a lot of the issues, especially in West County, while we're all sitting here to think about that, and who do we go to, because we may have 1 or 2, but we don't have enough.
Great. Anyone else want to do public comment? Yes.
I saw a whole bunch of different services available for a bunch of different people in a bunch of different languages. I didn't see any Muslim specific centers, and I didn't see any African American specific centers. Why is that?
Great, thank you. Other folks that would like to participate in public comment? Okay. All right, well, thank you so much for that. And if you have other thoughts, please don't hesitate to fill out the green public comment cards as well. So with that, I think we'd just like to close out with a few more thoughts. Oh, you did. Okay, please go ahead.
So I'm going to read them off. So one feedback was it was a good event, way to share some information and gain some more resources in the community. Wish that this could be done some more throughout the community. They'd love to have more forums, more options, more ways that people can be informed. There's a big need, and there's not enough knowledge of what is accessible currently. So, yeah.
Great, thank you for those. We'd just like to close out by thanking everyone for giving so generously of their time on a Saturday morning to come together around this really important topic. Thank you so much to all of the community members that are here in person and those who joined us via the live stream online. We also want to give a huge thanks to all of our incredible presenters this morning for sharing their experience and expertise. Yes, please, a round of applause for all of them. And a huge thank you to all of our service providers and resource tables that offered their time today. Please make sure you check them out if you didn't get a chance to earlier. We are going to have lunch available at the tables out in the lobby. So please help yourself to some lunch on your way out. And please don't forget to vote using those sticky dots on the sheets that are up in the hallway. So with that, we'll leave some resources up on the screen as you head out. Any closing thoughts? Are we good? Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Oh, don't forget to fill out the blue input forms. You can turn them in up on the way out. Thank you.